All right, we've got, about 1 hour and 20 minutes to go for the big budget speech, and we are broadcasting live from our news center here in New Delhi, where we're joined by a really special super budget panel. Sanjay Nair, CEO of KKR India, Mukesh Bhutani, Arvind Mara, a man who's been in the hot seat, Maithili Busnul, of course, our consulting editor as well, and joining us live from Hong Kong is Chetan Iyer of Morgan Stanley. Thank you so much, all of you, for being with us right here on ET. Now, Mr. Maram, this is going to come your way. 1 hour and 20 minutes to go before the budget speech. Help us understand what's happening in the corridors of power right now. You've been there just 2 years back. You were the man behind Arun Jaitley presenting his first budget. Help us understand what really happens now in the corridors of power.
So, the finance minister has already left for the Rashtrapati Bhavan. The finance minister will brief the president on the highlights of the budget, what is going to be presented. The president, in this case, because he was formerly the finance minister, he understands a lot of nitty-gritty of budget making. So he is going to ask questions.
So he's going to quiz him on the fiscal deficit number.
He will quiz him. I don't know on fiscal deficit or not, but he would certainly quiz the finance minister. And once that is done, then they will leave for the Parliament House, where the cabinet will meet. So the finance minister will then present to the cabinet the highlights, and then the cabinet will technically pass the budget document. And then finance minister will leave around 5 to 11 for the Lok Sabha. The cabinet will sit there for a while, and they would just enter the Lok Sabha just about a minute or two before 11 o'clock, and that's when the entire drama will start.
So that is to ensure that nothing really gets out of the budget, so to say. On our screens right now, while we were talking, were of course the budget copies that were being brought into the Parliament House, and that is going to be one document that will perhaps decide the fate of over 1 billion Indians and every stakeholder in the Indian economy. Let's set the context for this, and Sanjay, let's start with you. The context is that a lot of people believe this is going to be the most crucial budget from the Modi government. This is the third budget that Finance Minister Jaitley is going to present. How bold do you expect this budget to be, or do you believe somewhere the government is caught between being seen as being elitist, and yet they obviously want to cater to the distressed rural economy? Is the government somewhere sandwiched between the two demands that are coming for it?
No, I mean, I'm not a, sort of a study of the politics and of that, but I think just generally, and I hope it's a bold budget. I was even saying yesterday, here's a chance to reset the vision again. Not that we don't have a vision, but I think reset the vision, lay out the trade-offs. Fisc versus growth, private versus public spending, whatever the trade-offs are. Okay, banking sector, admit that we have an issue. Rural economy is suffering. We have a pretty lackluster capital market. Savings versus inflation. So there are all these trade-offs, and I think it's a good time to just take a step back and define what the vision is. You can't get everything right. And if you just look at the track record of this government, we just look back for 2 years, they have done, willy-nilly a lot of things happening at kind of the lower levels. Hopefully they will all show up, but I don't think we have the luxury of time for these small changes to show up one fine day, 5 years from now. I think it's better to take a kind of a midterm check, really lay out a bold vision, and again, don't have to achieve everything in a year, but lay it out for the next 5 years, and I think that helps a lot. So, I mean, I hope it's bold in terms of its vision and statement. Don't have to execute in a year. That's all I hope. I mean, I think that's a realistic approach.
Fair point indeed. So on your screens right now is Finance Minister Jaitley really arriving with that big budget in the House, and we at ET now believe, is he going to win many Oscars this afternoon or not, much like the Oscars that are being presented, Sandeep?
That's right. Those are visuals of Finance Minister walking with Minister of State for Finance, Jayant Sinha, who's also been fairly in the limelight, much unlike the past with the Finance Minister. That's him entering, I guess, like Mr. Mayaram pointed out, the cabinet meeting will start in a short while from now. But Chetan Iyer, this is coming your way. We had Sanjay Nair say that expectations are that this will be a bold budget, because if you look at it traditionally, this is the best opportunity. The third budget, first budget, you don't have much time. Second budget, you're still finding your feet. Now is the time, which is why here at ET now, we're calling the theme as time is now. Would you agree with that view that this is the best opportunity for this government to reset the entire paradigm?
Well, I don't think that we should expect so much. I mean, I don't think the budget is really the time when you can come up with a resetting of your objectives. I think it's just about confirming the objectives, which is essentially to try and revive the private investment And in the meantime, while private investment has got all the challenges, the government is focusing on public investment. So I think that's the objective which has been laid out. We just need to see more in terms of steps towards that. I don't think we should assume budget to be the main area by which they do it. I mean, we all know that the biggest pending legislation is GST, and it's got nothing to do with the budget specifically. So yeah, looking for two key objectives, or rather the policy approaches which the government has been taking up since the formation of the government in 2014. One is to cut back the inefficient redistribution spending, which was the cause behind inflation. That's been happening. We want to see more commitment towards that. And second is to revive investment. Public is already going ahead. What is it that the government has in the budget to get the private investment going? Those are the two things I would be watching in the budget. But those are the objectives which we have known. So I wouldn't say there would be a reset per se.
Mr. Bhutani, if I may bring this to you, because this is being called the make or break budget for the Modi government, what is it that you would want the finance minister to focus on? What are the key things that you will be looking out for in this budget?
Are you looking at the budget as a one-year document, or are you looking at the
Something
vision?
that sets the stage for the Indian economy.
I think the fact remains budget is a one-year document. If I have to look at the external challenges that we are currently facing, I think we have to decide whether tinkering with monetary and fiscal policy is going to give the growth momentum for a country like India. And I think that's a big challenge. I think you can carry out tinkering to a particular extent and you can achieve those targets, whether the fiscal deficit should be 3.5 or 3.75, that really doesn't matter. For which you need structural reforms and for which you need a vision. So whether that's a vision on agriculture, or that's a vision on infrastructure, or that's a vision on how do you reset the balance sheets of the bank, or deeper administrative tax reforms. So today morning, most of the newspapers said that if in third year, the monsoons are going to be good, it's going to be a leg up for the agricultural production, so he's going to add up and the growth rate would be closer to 8%. I don't think that we should look at a budget document as a one-year document. Instead, I think it's a great opportunity for this government, which is getting into the middle of its term, to lay out a vision for the next 2.5, 3 years, or for that matter, even a longer-term vision. Right. Because, you know, most people also speculate that this government is not here just for 5 years, and it's actually a stated statement by the Prime Minister that we are here for the long term. Right. So I think that is, my view, is very, very critical, and I did not see that long-term vision in the 2015 budget.
Right. Maitri, you think he's going to do that now? Do you think he's going to lay down that long-term vision? Is this going to be a big reset, or are we just being too optimistic? Like Chetan points out, he's saying, you know, don't expect all of that. He just needs to play to the script. As long as he does that, markets will be okay.
Yeah, frankly, Sandeep, put it down to my being a skeptical journalist. I don't really buy this vision business, you know, because governments are here for 5 years and every budget basically is with an eye to how can we get re-elected, how can we come back to business. And I've seen too many promises made and broken. And unfortunately, nobody holds governments to promises that they made in the past. So I would like a budget that is workmanlike, addresses the nuts and bolts of the system and means business. And from what we see of Mr. Modi, at least what he did in Gujarat, that's what he did there. He's not been able to replicate that to quite the same extent in the center, but I do hope this budget sticks to the knitting and does what it's meant to do, basically decide how is government going to revive investment.
Fair point indeed. You being a skeptical journalist and only fair to be that, but Dr. Mayam, let me come to you. Fiscal deficit, in his first budget, when you were working with him, you guys chose to stick to the path of fiscal consolidation. It was delayed by a year in the budget of 2015. What should happen in 2016? Because that's the one big number that everybody is watching out for. What are the compulsions because of which he may breach it, and why do you think he should stick to it if that's your position?
So I'll only say this because yesterday in the in the discussion there was this belief that what if you breach it by 20 basis points or so? I mean, heavens will not fall. I agree, heavens will not fall, and that is true. But having been in the position of the finance secretary, I could see from the inside that the amount of credibility, you know, the suspicion about government's intentions or intent, and the propensity of governments to, once breaching a certain discipline, to go then a little further than that, that is hugely there in the market. So the moment you budge a little from your stated position, unless there is a major catastrophe happening, of course, then it's different. But then people begin to say, today you have reached 20%, but what if you require by December you want to do something bigger? So you'll say, let's borrow a little more. What does it matter? You go to the market and borrow a little more. So it's this kind of a sense outside that it's not a one-off. So last year, the budget said this is a one-off. We are not going to do this again.
According to you, they have to stick to
now
fiscal
this year they'll
consolidation.
have another one-off.
Can I ask Mr.
So
Mallya
then
a
another
question?
one-off.
Yeah.
Mr. Mallya, one of the big opportunities that Mr. Jaitley lost was to use the flexibility and the leeway given in the first budget he presented to loosen that fiscal gap, because he really, the numbers were clearly, there were many off-budget items. He could have used that opportunity to be incredible had he not stuck to that very rigid fiscal knitting. You were an insider then. Can you tell us today what was the advice or based on which he stuck to a rather unrealistic fiscal deficit in his first budget, and today maybe we are paying the price for that?
I don't know whether we are paying a price for that or we are reaping the benefits of it. The way it is consolidating today, it is also because there was a huge amount of discipline that the government decided to keep in the first budget. I'll ask the contrary question to that. Yeah, last year we did loosen the fisc. And what are the great benefits that we have reaped from that?
Let's get Chetan Iyer in on that.
The issue here is, I mean, it's a question of which side you are looking at it, at it from.
Sure. So there's exactly,
That's the big elephant in the room.
and we've got Chetan Iyer, probably, Dr. Maram spoke about how it causes a lot of anxiousness among investors. Chetan, which side of the debate are you on? You heard Mr. Maram point out that it cannot be, you can't keep breaching these targets because you lose credibility. Sitting in Hong Kong and having a pulse of the mood of foreign investors, what's your sense? Can the government afford to breach the target once again, give itself a little more leeway on the fiscal side? Will heaven fall?
No, I agree with Dr. Mayaram that ideally they should stay on the path of fiscal consolidation. And so to the extent to which the finance minister did give a tough target and is going to achieve it, I think it's the right approach to make. But for F-17, we do think that considering the fact that you have a major increase in government employees' wages, that the finance minister will probably not be able to stick to the earlier stated 3.5 target, and we think they'll probably be targeting 3.7. And in the March 16 financial year, we think the deficit would be 3.8. So 10 basis point reduction on that path of consolidation, but not completely being able to achieve, because this year we genuinely do have a problem of one-off increase in government employees' wages.
All right, a one-off liability, Sanjay, that question is coming your way. Is the argument around liability a little too overstretched? Because they have also made a windfall on oil, about 1,40,000 crore, just on the fact that crude prices have crashed. Leave aside the excise and all of that. I want to ask you, which side of this entire debate are you on? Give growth a chance, loosen your purse strings, or no, come what may, stick to the fiscal deficit to the last decimal point?
I mean, I said yesterday, look, 10 to 20 basis points if you miss the 3.5 target is not a big deal. I think really goes down to the question of the quality of both the expenditure and the revenues. The one-offs that were given away in the last 3-4 years are difficult to take back. So you have to manage within that. Plus you have a few new one-offs as well. I think you have to remember a big money has to be laid out for the bank recapitalization plan. I think we haven't talked about that as yet today. And that's going to be another big one that they'll have to give some kind of a support, whatever the numbers be. You look at all of that, I think the question really becomes, where do you get these revenues from? And I think the absolute number of the fisc deficit, not just the percentage, I think is critical. We have a pretty large number that we have to borrow from the markets, and then that puts pressure on the rates. So look, I think we can keep debating this. I think that's the kind of trade-off the government has to make. That's why I come back to the point of vision. I'm not saying it's a long-term vision issue, but it's a short-term trade-offs you have to make. It's fisc versus growth. And I think there's no harm in missing it by 20, 25 basis points, but then laying out very clearly where the money will be spent. What is the return on capital for that? Who's in charge of that? I don't think that's dramatic. I mean, this government has done more dramatic stuff. They are very focused on execution. They have clear laying out of priorities. I don't see why you can't do that. But if you waste that expenditure, then I think it's wasteful. And on the revenue side, I think there's just too much of one-off revenues, oil benefit, divestment targets are unreal. Got to figure out a better way of getting more real, stable revenues, which I think there are many, but that's again a question of vision, right? You got to lay out.
All those stuff, what are the revenue options? Sale of strategic assets is what we're going to talk about in a short while from now. But it's a divided house clearly on the fiscal versus growth. Maitri and of course even Sanjay believe that you can relax a little bit just to give us a little bit of comfort. Whereas Dr. Mayaram and Chetan pointing out that ideally you should stick to your targets because of credibility. But Dr. Mayaram, I'm going to come back to you because this is going to be the central theme, which is, can we expect something out of the ordinary in this budget, or are we being unrealistic in having those expectations in the first place? Politically, is this the best time for this government to deliver? Because the next budget is going to be an election budget. When he delivers the next budget, he's going to keep an eye on elections in 2019. So politically, is this the best time to take, in a lot of states as well, so is this the best time politically for this government to take some tough decisions?
I certainly believe that is so, because after the third budget, generally you go into the election mode, because the next 2 years then you're kind of looking at the elections that will take place, and there are some crucial state elections which are coming up, so there will be a less elbow room there. As far as the budget's fundamentals are concerned for this year, I think primarily, if at the heart of it they keep revival of demand as the driving force and build the entire story around it, then it certainly will be a major step forward. Because whatever you may say in terms of infrastructure spend or and everything else that we talk about, unless you have that revival in the demand, and which likely is going to happen a bit from the pay commission. But we must remember the other thing which is very critical and important is that the pay commission benefits, direct benefits, go only to the government servants.
Right.
And this huge, large number of people who are out there, especially the labor, agricultural labor, because yesterday there was a lot of, lot of the channels were carrying this fact that there is now a Kisan Bima Yojana and all that stuff.
Right.
But see, those who have land, there are very large number those who don't have land, and they are landless labor.
Sure.
And they are very distressed at the moment. So I don't know how much this is going to help in going forward there. So we need to keep demand, which means across the board,
Right.
at the heart of it, and then build programs around that, so that there is a revival of demand out there.
So demand, rural economy and PSU bank recapitalization are the big elephants in the room. We will come back and talk about all of that and a lot more right here with a super budget panel on ET Now. Stay tuned for that. Time for a very, very quick breather here.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.